Good evening, everyone. Great to have you here. I am State Representative Kate Farrar. I am a member of our West Hartford delegation. I represent the 20th District, West Hartford and Newington, and glad to be joined with my colleagues and some experts tonight, but most importantly, all of you, to have an important discussion and sharing of resources related to the important issue of immigration in our town and our state. As a nation and community of immigrants, I know that we want to be informed and educated about how to best support our diverse and vibrant community and our state. And I look forward to hearing from our experts as well and just getting a chance to hear from all of you about how we can best support you and your needs and questions as well. So I'll hand this down the road and then we'll hand it over to our partners in this event who are the West Hartford Human Rights Commission. And one more thing I want to acknowledge our wonderful Mayor, Sherry Cantor, who has joined us. So thank you, Mayor, for joining us tonight.
Good evening. I'm Tammy Exum, State Representative for West Hartford and Avon. I'm the 19th District Representative, and it's just good to be with you this evening. And I'm so happy to be a part of and to really celebrate our diverse community. And I look forward to learning tonight. This is a good opportunity for us all to listen and learn and ask questions and to learn how to be most supportive of each other. So thank you for your time this evening, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jillian Gilchrist, State Representative from the 18th District here in West Hartford, and some of our neighboring communities have experienced some really intense things lately, and so I'm looking forward to this conversation to better understand how we can be as supportive as possible. Thank you.
Good evening. It's a pleasure for me to be here. My name is James Sanchez, State Representative for the 6th District, which is West Hartford and Hartford. And I truly understand the issues that we're facing and experiencing, and with the diverse community in both West Hartford and Hartford, there are challenges that we need to address and educate ourselves, and I'm here also to learn. But I'm also, at the end of this conversation, I'd like to share some information that a good friend of mine from Washington, D.C. has shared with me. He works with immigrants, and that's his sole job, is to help the immigrants navigate through the issues that we're facing now. So I'm looking forward to our conversation. Thank you.
And just of note, we are expecting Senator Derek Slapp in a bit, who is our state senator, and we also are hoping to be joined a little bit later as well by Representative Bobby Gibson, who's also a member of the West Hartford delegation. But on that note, I'm happy to pass this program along to Katie, who will introduce herself as one of the core members that we've partnered with on this with the West Hartford Human Rights Commission. So, Katie, all yours.
All right, great. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Katie Lance, and I'm here with another commissioner from the West Hartford Human Rights Commission, Dave Ware, who will be helping moderate the Q&A later. I'll be helping moderate the panel, try keeping things on time. And can you hear better now? A little bit? Okay. I don't know how sound works, but if we can turn it up a little for people, I'll try and also project more. And so we're really excited to be here with this delegation for this panel. We have a variety of experts who are working a lot on the front lines dealing with immigrants in our communities, whether at the legal level, the community level, and we find that very important. One of our priorities on the West Hartford Human Rights Commission this upcoming year is the rights of immigrants and non-residents, and we are really here for you. So we meet the first Wednesday of every month around 6:45 at Elmwood Community Center. And feel free, if you have concerns or questions, not just about immigration, but about any other human rights issues, feel free to come to us and we'll do our best to help or answer questions or point you in the right direction. We're also available via email, WEHAHRC for West Hartford HRC @gmail.com. And for those of you watching tonight, thanks to our partners, West Hartford Community Interactive. If you have questions, you can ask them in the chat. The chat will be enabled on YouTube, and we'll do our best to watch that along with the people here in person with us. So Without further ado, I will introduce our panelists. Each panelist will have about 10 minutes to speak, and then we'll have a lot of time left for Q&A, because I know this is a pressing issue for a lot of people. So first, we'll have Constanza Segovia. She is the organizing director of CT for All, and also serves as co-founder and lead organizer for Hartford Deportation Defense. Connecticut for All is a statewide coalition and organizing network that brings together workers, immigrants, and community members to build collective power, advocate for equitable policies, and ensure that every resident, regardless of immigration status, can live and thrive with dignity. Hartford Deportation Defense is an immigrant-led immigrant rights organization that organizes neighbors to build a just and dignified future for their families and communities in the Hartford region. Constanza has represented HDD, Hartford Deportation Defense, and helped lead statewide social justice coalitions like the CT Immigrant Rights Alliance, Husky for Immigrants, the CT Coalition for Immigrant Freedom, and Connecticut for All. And tonight she'll be speaking about uplifting our movement priorities for special session, limits due to the Trust Act, and other Know Your Rights information. And after that, we have Andrea Sanchez, who is executive consultant at Connecticut Students for a Dream and the CT Immigrant Support Network. She has spent the last decade working for immigrant rights and services on the local, state, and national level via Connecticut Students for a Dream, the CT Undocu-Fund, IRIS, Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services, and Welcome Corps. Andrea studied international studies with a concentration in the Middle East and minored in French and Arabic languages. She is also the proud daughter of immigrants. Tonight, she will be talking about the youth aspect, how these policies are affecting schools, and new policies on unaccompanied minors. After that, we'll hear from attorney Dana Buchin, and she is an award-winning immigration and international attorney and partner at Harris Beach Murtha. Dana represents businesses and individual clients on a wide range of immigration matters encompassing business and employment-based, family-based, humanitarian-based, detention and removal defense immigration matters. Dana regularly provides multilingual legal representation in English, Spanish, French, and Romanian. So any Spanish speakers, feel free to hable español with her. And most of our panel, come to think of it. She will be speaking tonight on business and employment-based immigration and what is happening with H-1B visas. Finally, we have attorney Kara Hart, and she is an attorney based in West Hartford who guides individuals and families through the U.S. immigration system. She focuses on family-based immigration and naturalization with the goal of helping clients to participate more fully in our communities, economy, and democracy. She will be speaking tonight about individuals who are sponsoring other family members for permanent residence. So without further ado, I pass it on to Constanza.
Hi everybody. Oh,
Let's turn that on.
Hello. It's great to be here. I have a lot of information to share, and I'm happy to answer questions later. But a couple of things I wanted to focus is, based on what we can do as regular people in our communities to respond to this moment. We are, facing unprecedented attacks from our own federal government, and our state and our municipalities have a role in helping to protect our communities, and each of us have a role in helping that happen. We at Hartford Deportation Defense, I'll start from the most local grassroots work that I do. We organize neighbors for power so that we can advocate at the state level for immigrant policy or immigrant protection policies, and also policies that generally benefit our communities, like funding for public schools, funding for Medicaid, and better experiences for our students. Public education has been a big issue for us, and of course now with the escalating ICE activity, we have been focusing a lot on the protections that we need our communities to have right now, which basically ties to a lot of the wins that we have had as the immigrant rights movement of Connecticut. One of the primary concerns that we have right now is and all of the access that we've been able to get, right? Like what happens with all of that information that exists in government databases? How do we know that that is safeguarded? That when we said, yes, we trust the government with our information, and again, we're coming at it from an immigrant rights perspective, but I think we all know, and again, I'm sure other people have perspective on other ways that our data can be compromised and folks can be targeted just for simply being on the other side politically to the government right now. So the protection of our data is really important for us in the immigrant community. We're really concerned about the driver's license information, right? We worked very hard to have driver's licenses for all people regardless of immigration status. That allows people to get insurance, that allows people to drive safely in all of our communities, makes everybody safer and just, have less opportunities to get in trouble. We now are concerned that that data could be shared or compromised, so we want to safeguard that. Same with DRS data, Department of Revenue Services, right? Like a lot of people who don't want to talk positively about immigrants, often ignore the fact that we pay taxes, right? And undocumented immigrants pay taxes and never get refunds. And we pay into programs that we are not eligible for, right? So the DRS data now being, if it were compromised, it's literally penalizing people who have decided to do that thing, who, again, going back to the Obama administration, like a lot of us were told that if we paid taxes and we were, good, we would be able to get a pathway to citizenship. And here we are years later with those people who decided to do all the right things, now being afraid for their security. And like that with DSS data as well, and data that the state holds for in-state tuition for undocumented students. Then the other priorities that we have right now that we want addressed as immediately as possible is protection of the courthouses. Again, it goes back to all of our communities being safe. If people are worried about reporting on a domestic violence situation that they're experiencing, or if they've been a victim of a crime and they don't want to go to the police or to court because they think that's going to put them in a vulnerable position with immigration, that is a problem for all of us and is a problem for our communities. So we want to protect the courthouses so that courthouses can do their work, and we have to separate, right? Like there's different processes for different things. Then we want to make sure, again, as we see the escalating operations of immigration enforcement and the way that they're just blatantly racially profiling people, just using very aggressive tactics that are scary for all of us, or like scaring our kids who talk to their friends at school and are like, what do you mean the government is doing this? Like, this is, our communities, right? So we want to know that our tax dollars are not being used for this. We have so much need in our communities, and we have so many important things to spend our tax dollars on that would support our families, that would support people having a decent life. And the last thing we need is to be spending that precious funds in terrorizing people. And connected to that, we are pushing for the surplus that the state currently holds to be spent to be ready for the federal cuts that are coming our way. Very immediately impacting SNAP benefits for people, but also, down the line, Medicaid, which impacts so many of our lives. And we need that money to be put in a fund so that we can respond, and so that we don't lose another one of the big fights that we've been fighting for years, which is Husky access for anybody regardless of immigration status. But again, this is not just about that program, it's about nobody losing Medicaid regardless of their immigration status and how they get it. I think those are our priorities for special session. I know we're talking to our legislators. We have ways that each of you can connect with folks who are not here today. But we are actively working on that. We just delivered 900 postcards to our governor this afternoon, and had a very clear message. We really hope that this can be addressed in a special session this coming month. I think there's other aspects of the work that we were going to talk about, but it seems like time is probably, I have more time?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's most top of mind right now, because again, there's only so much work that we can do at the community level with us, with each other. Sometimes we need the state to step in and protect us, right? Like we can't just mutual aid our way out of Medicaid cuts, right? But we do support each other. We have, I have flyers in the front, ways that people can donate. We support a lot of the families in our community that are impacted by recent raids and detentions. We've been actively in touch with almost everybody who was taken in Newington at the car wash. I forget what date it was, somewhat very recently, and now that happened again last week in Hamden. So there's a lot of work that we are doing at the community level when we know that the state takes longer to act. So you are welcome to be part of that. We have an emergency hotline. Just wanted to share with people that anybody can call that line if you're concerned that there might be an immigration operation in your neighborhood. We just ask that people are really mindful about how to share that information. Just be specific about what you see, the time and date of what you're seeing, and then call the hotline. I have flyers that I also put up front and little cards that you can carry with you that have Know Your Rights information, then also the local emergency line. But basically you can call this line and we'll assess if it's possible to respond and check on whether it's ICE. We can go and basically alert the community that there's a raid going on. That's been effective already in some instances, and it's been really effective when we've seen other kinds of operations, when neighbors have gotten really scared seeing some large police presence, people in military gear, and then we found out, oh no, it's another federal agency, and they were carrying out like something about weapons. I forget the name of the agency, but that happened recently in Hartford, right on the West Hartford line. So we're able to just very quickly check on that and verify that it's nothing to worry about in that moment, and spread the word about that so that the fear doesn't get to every corner of our community, and we try to do that as much as possible. So anybody can call the hotline, and the number is here. And I think with that we also have Know Your Rights information and a lot of things that people can do at the local level. If you're interested, you could get in touch with us at hartforddeportationdefense@gmail.com.
Hello, okay. All right, so yes, like I was so lovely introduced. My name is Andrea. I work at Connecticut Students for a Dream. So Connecticut Students for a Dream is a youth-led organization that fights for the rights of undocumented students and their families in Connecticut. We've been around for 15 years now, and we've done different projects and different bills that we've been advocating for over the years. One of them was, university-based, so advocating for the switch of undocumented students having to pay the international student rate, even if they had lived in the state for most of their lives, to in-state tuition, and then further giving them access to institutional aid since they did not qualify for applying for the FAFSA due to not having a social security number. So Connecticut now has a form called the ACTIS,
which is how undocumented students can access scholarships and other financial aid in order to pursue higher education. We have also done a lot of work for Husky for Immigrants, trying to expand access to health insurance for folks without documentation, and also working on some Trust Act things, so providing protections from federal agencies and their access to undocumented folks' private information. So yeah, I can give you guys some stats from the Migration Policy Institute. I know I like numbers, I like to get a good sense of things. So in Connecticut, we have 543,000 immigrants. So that makes up around 15% of our population. 198,000 of those are undocumented, and 33,000 of those are under the age of 24. So that means that most of these families are mixed status families. There's at least one person in their family that is undocumented. And it's a very scary time. I feel like we've pretty much just been bracing for impact, so to speak, which sounds dramatic, but it really, really isn't when you see what you're seeing online, right, and all these different videos and the raids in Southington, Newington, Hamden. Danbury has seen so much ICE activity. And so we as an organization have kind of pivoted, where before we were doing a lot of, maybe you've seen them, the red cards, Know Your Rights cards, right? Which is useful information, but from what we've seen, it's not necessarily being honored anymore. People are breaking car windows and dragging people out of vehicles, right? Like that's happened in the state several times, with an attorney in the car, with other folks in the car, just literally being dragged out of their cars. So we've pivoted from, having just the red cards to something that we are calling the Red Folder Project. Maybe some of you have heard of it so far. If not, I'm happy to explain it now a bit. So essentially, the Red Folder is a collection of documents that an attorney would need in order to start the process for bond should you be detained, right? So instead of pre-detention, we're focusing on post-detention now, right? Having folks have copies of their documentation, letters of support, legal forms that are either partially filled out or blank with just a signature, things that, an attorney would need. What we're seeing on the ground is that folks are being picked up. There's no detention facility in Connecticut, right, but there's some in the surrounding states. So people are getting picked up, brought to Hartford, the federal building, 450 Main Street, and then from there they're transferred to Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and then from there they're being transferred to southern states, right? Facilities in Louisiana, Texas, Georgia, Florida, places where we are seeing abhorrent treatment of their detainees, right? Lots of human rights violations. And so with that, additionally, it is a lot harder for attorneys to enter these facilities and get the documentation that they would need from clients, right? Get a signature could take them a trip down to Texas, right? Which increases the cost and things like that. So yeah, we've been putting those together for people. We're also training volunteers, even if they don't have legal background. We're doing kind of like a 3-step training, so that they can help affected community members have those filled out, because it is a lengthy process, right? For the attorney, if they have everything together, it could be just a matter of hours of work for them, like 2-3 hours, right? Which is exponentially better than weeks of trying to track down these different documents. So that's something that we've been working on. Also a scary thing that's come out was the Operation Freaky Friday. I don't know if anyone's heard it, which, crazy name, first of all. But it is an operation that is targeting unaccompanied minors. So children as young as 10, right, are being affected by this, but also the main demographic is from 14 to 18-year-olds. And what's gonna start happening is that the DHS is gonna send them a letter saying, hi, we know you're here, and invite them to self-deport. They'll offer them $2,500 as an incentive to self-deport. And if they don't comply, they're going to send them another letter saying that they're gonna start targeting their family, which is insane. And yeah, so more information on that will come out, but that is a very real thing that is happening. So another thing is the Big Beautiful Bill that I'm sure you've all heard a lot about, right? Part of that Big Beautiful Bill means that there was $170 billion that was allocated towards DHS and ICE. So that, even though the government is shut down, we've seen a good amount of that money get put into effect, and we are seeing the ramifications of that. It also is affecting a lot of these mixed status families that I mentioned before. So people are going to be losing their SNAP, their WIC, their Medicaid, basic things that they need. And so that is also terrifying. We also see, because of this Big Beautiful Bill, a lot of orgs have lost a lot of their funding. The organization that I used to work at, IRIS, which I see Linda Bronstein, she was an amazing case manager for many, many years. They can no longer serve the undocumented population, right? So we're seeing less and less resources for a more and more dangerous situation for these community members. Great, and so also, there's no protections for youth now, right? We used to, when you hear about DACA still exists, but those folks are 30, 40 years old, right? They're not youths anymore, they're grown. And they're also starting to lose protections. But there's nothing for our youth now. There's no path, there's no way to adjust status, and so it's just an impossible situation. And then the biggest thing is really the mental health effect of this all, right? The impact that it has on children, people that, folks that should be just focusing on their studies and really just being a child, and now they're being forced to really grow up and live with this inherent fear. And we've relied a lot on our teachers. Our educators are crucial to this work in Connecticut, because not only do they have a better grasp on their children and what they see in the day-to-day, but also when these students are getting picked up. We have a record of at least six students in Connecticut that have been picked up so far, 6 high schoolers that we've been working directly with. The teachers are kind of on the front lines, right, for case management, so for social work. They're the ones that are, getting documentation together for folks. They are, filling out and writing letters of support that are being used in court to release these children from detention centers. So really a shout out to teachers, and it just goes to show that it really is a community effort. So I'm really, really happy that we're all here today. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. We need everybody's help, right? It takes a literal village, and so I'll be reaching out to you for more support. But that's all I have to say for now. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them in the best way that I can.
Hello, my name is Dana Buchin. I'm a private immigration attorney. I practice everything under the umbrella of immigration law, and there's literally not a thing I wouldn't practice under immigration law. I made it a point of my 20-year-long career to there being nothing that I'm not proficient in, for the simple fact that to be immigrant-centric, you need to know all the ways in which you could legalize an immigrant, whether it's business or employment, which is most of what I do, or whether it's family-based, or whether it is humanitarian-based, asylum, humanitarian parole, DACA, etc. I always wanted to be able to help everyone, no matter what type of immigrant they were. And I am here to deal with the aspect of immigration law called business immigration or employment-based immigration. But because I don't have much to report. I also agreed from the beginning to tackle the issue of habeas corpus and federal litigation to get people out of detention. So I'm happy to do both in 10 minutes, right? Okay. Business immigration, what is that? And business or employment-based immigration is when the immigrant comes to this country on a temporary work visa and seeks permanent residence based on a green card, which also is known as green card. So permanent residence and green card is the same thing. And that permanent residence is obtained through employment-based sponsorship, which is a very legitimate way to gain status in this country, and not many people know about this. It is absolutely possible for employers to help out in this fight. And I think we are underestimating their power right now. And we should talk among folks trying to help the immigrant communities, how we can mobilize their employers who have been so far employing them with or without papers. How can we mobilize employers to do the right thing and petition for their permanent residence? Yes, it costs. Yes, it's a cost of labor, but any labor costs. The labor comes with cost, and this would be a cost of acquiring labor in a state that still has open jobs that are not filled. And so, the developments in business immigration are the following. The most well-known development is that in the H-1B visa category. The H-1B is a visa for professional workers, and it's the most traditional, well-known work visa category. Every March, there's a lottery for it, just simply because for 30 plus years, we never got our act together in Congress to give us enough H-1B visas for the needs of this economy. So we've always had way less H-1B visas available than the number of folks who are needed in this economy. And so, for example, this past year, it was 378,000 people against 85,000 spots. Last year, 478,000 against 85,000. The year before, 700-something thousand against 85,000 spots. So you get the point. We have had deficiencies in the H-1B visa scenario. And as if those were not enough, as if it wasn't enough to chase away talent that we needed, now, recently, September 21st, there was a new imposition of a $100,000 fee per H-1B visa. I am happy to let you know, though, that as of yesterday, USCIS announced on its website, not through change in regulations or any proclamation, but rather a simple clarification on its website saying that, you know what? You know the nightmare you guys have been living on since September 21st when we announced this? Never mind. We're not going to impose a $100,000 fee for anyone who's already in this country in F1 student status looking to change to H-1B, which is, by the way, the vast majority of people applying for H-1B visas entry level anyway. So I guess what they just clarified is that the only people that will be affected are folks coming from abroad and who are not currently here in F1 student status. That is good news, and I would venture to say it's in response to the major feedback that they've got from everyone, including the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who filed a lawsuit against the administration and a bunch of other parties. So backlash worked, and this issue has just been cleared as of yesterday, giving me more time to talk to you about habeas petitions today. So before I transition from business immigration good news, I still want to let you know that even the legal business immigration field is under attack. It's not just the undocumented, it's the perfectly documented with work visa type of people on L1s and E2s and O1s and blah, blah, blah. All these alphabet soups are being under attack. How? Number one, the Department of Labor has way longer wait times from anything from work visas to green cards based on employment. For some reason, the waiting times have exploded from the past administration to this administration, so now it takes so much longer for the Department of Labor to adjudicate petitions. Now, the Department of Labor is simply in shutdown mode for now, just because of the general shutdown. But even before the shutdown, it was just taking its very long time to adjudicate, which means it takes that much longer for people to get their status, even if they're wanted in this country by an employer. What else can I tell you? As you've heard on the news, there's been a lot of ICE work site enforcement actions, like the car wash, like all the other employers that they've raided. And our law firm has been very busy advising employers what to do. The internet is full with know your rights, what to do for the employer and for the employees. And these good folks are really great at telling you what those are. But one thing that's my favorite thing to tell people, especially employers, look, if you suspect you have undocumented workers, or you don't even know, but maybe there might be, you know what you need to do? Just call an immigration attorney on the premises. Do a confidential side. You don't even want to know who's going in there. Just have your employees consult with an immigration attorney who could legalize them or at least put them on track for some sort of a legalization path before ICE comes raiding. If ICE comes raiding and they don't find anyone undocumented, that's it, right? So the antidote to all this fear, the antidote to this is legalization, okay? And the person, the professional who's licensed to offer it is an immigration attorney. And so that is my favorite way of advising employers. Just proactively, just make sure that if anybody who is on your premises can legalize, do it now, before they come knocking. When they come knocking, after they come knocking and they find you as an employer with undocumented workers on the premises, there's trouble for everyone involved, including the employer. So there's an incentive for people to just get it done, get the legalization done. A few other things I want to communicate to you is all these humanitarian paroles and TPS statuses that used to give people a work permit, like TPS Venezuela, gone. TPS, a bunch of other countries have lost their TPS. El Salvador, a bunch of various countries lost their TPS status and their right to work. Haitians, Cubans, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans lost their humanitarian paroles and their work permits. It's in litigation mode right now. It's going like zigzagging through federal courts. But whenever there's an announcement that these folks lost their status, their employers are under obligation to do something like laying them off, or else they're going to be charged with hiring undocumented workers. And so this is devastating for people who arrived here legally, had the work permits, and all of a sudden from today to tomorrow, they're being declared out of status. It's devastating for them. What's the antidote for that? Again, they need to consult with an attorney who could turn their status to something more solid, like an employment-based green card, or family-based petition that my colleague is going to talk about, etc. And Ukrainians are also in danger. Their status has been frozen. They came here under humanitarian parole. When you hear the word parole, people who arrived here on parole are in big trouble, because parole is given by the president, can be taken away by the president through unilateral action, unlike visas, who are given by Congress and are very hard to take away. And only through Congress. And so Ukrainians have had their status frozen, and it's very difficult for them because they don't have any predictability. So that's a vulnerable population. I would like to invite all the nonprofits, the awesome nonprofits who used to serve undocumented or immigrants in general and are no longer able to for lack of funding, to get together with us in the private practice and see what we could do together, because this is, there's acute lack of access to justice right now due to lack of funding for nonprofits, but we could perhaps help from the private sector. Any questions that you might have about how things work, let me know. In the meantime, another big thing to remember, which I'm sure you guys know about, if you get caught these days, if you get arrested by ICE and you had an entry without inspection, so without a visa, you just lost the ability to present your bond case before an immigration judge. And unfortunately, the only remedy right now is a federal court with jurisdiction over the detention center, meaning that residents of Connecticut now have to hire people with license to practice law in wherever you said they're being sent, Colorado, Louisiana. So in response to this, what I've tried to do for our clients is I teamed up with colleagues in those states so that we could defend people wherever they're being detained. But the practice of law to release immigrants has just become monumentally harder than before, because the Hartford Immigration Court or even the Massachusetts Immigration Court no longer has jurisdiction to release them if they came in undocumented status. It's a different story for the ones who arrived with a visa. They could still be released by an immigration judge. But the undocumented folks, even if they've been here for 20 plus years, and I have cases, they cannot be released, and they're there for months until a federal judge can order habeas corpus. So just be careful. And also, what's the antidote to that? To not getting caught? Legalizing before they come for you. And I am a firm believer in the power of getting immigrants to consult a second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th attorney on legalization options until you find a way. Because there's so many immigrants who could have legalized, and then they get caught, and then they found out that they could have legalized before ICE came to them. And that is my contribution, to just make sure that anybody who could legalize can do so now. Thank you.
I agree. Opinion, second opinion, third opinion, very important. So again, I'm Cara Hart. I'm based in West Hartford. I'm an attorney who practices primarily family-based immigration and naturalization. It's my honor to walk with people through the system to a place of opportunity for whatever it is the family wants to pursue or the individual wants to pursue. And sometimes when I think about immigration, I realize, like, as we all know, human beings have migrated since well before the time of Moses, and for all the same reasons. But today, it feels so especially fraught. And I try sometimes to explain to people close to me why that is. And so I thought we'd talk for a minute about what's the same and what's different now, and what we might do. So the thing that has not changed, as folks have commented already, are our laws. Our statutes haven't really changed. And even the regulations haven't changed. So essentially, there are 4 doors to become a permanent resident in the United States. And Dana has discussed these. So door number 1, employment-based immigration through a business. Dana's an expert in this. Door number 2, family sponsorship. So one family member who is already a member of our club sponsors another family member. Door number 3, humanitarian programs, primarily through asylum or refugee programs, but there are others as well. And then door number 4 is a lottery. We have a diversity visa lottery in the country, 55,000 per year, really, that are available to people from countries who send relatively few people to the United States. So if the laws are the same and the doors are essentially the same, what's different? What's different now is how our agencies are applying the laws and the regulations, how they're carrying them out. In my opinion, they're being carried out in ways that are unnecessarily cruel and inflexible. So when an executive order is issued or the agency writes a memo about how they're going to carry out the law, it has very serious consequences for people who are trying to find their way through the right door. It also changes the pathway to that door, the risks, the terrain, what are the pitfalls. So my message to people is that, I think as Dana has also said, there are still doors and there are still pathways, but it's more important than ever to get good advice so that you can plan for the terrain. First of all, you want to know, can I go through that door? Because our gatekeepers don't allow you to wait outside as they might have more easily in the past. Do I qualify to go through that door? What is the terrain? So maybe it does sound trite to say, advice is crucial, but it really is. I feel like even for me, one of the most important services that I provide are consultations. And if someone meets with me and it doesn't convert to a case where I'm able to file a petition or represent them, that's not necessarily a failure. Because what it sometimes allows us to do is to make a plan. What needs to happen first? It could be that another family member needs to naturalize before they can help out this other person. And so a consultation really is, I think, one of the best services that I can provide, that Dana can provide, and it's awesome when we can take the next step of actually embarking on a path with someone. But again, embarking on a journey when you don't know if you can go through that door or whether or not you'll make it down the path can have very serious consequences. Because one of the policies that they've implemented is when immigration denies a benefit, and even naturalization under some circumstances, the denial can trigger a mandatory removal proceeding. That officer will have to refer the person for removal proceedings. Much better to know ahead of time whether or not that's a risk and how to prepare for it. So in closing, again, I want to emphasize there are paths, they do exist, and it's my sincere hope that as attorneys and that as a community we'll insist that our government use more humane policies to carry out the authority that it's been given. I'll also be available for questions after. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone, for your information that you shared. We now have about an hour for Q&A, so we were hoping that we could have a lively discussion. Any questions you may have for the speakers? I think legislators might also be willing to answer questions.
Anyone with a question?
Partly the lawyers, but really with our legislators and the Hartford deportation defense. So sometime within the last week, the chief judge of the Cook County courts in Illinois issued an order, no ICE people in the courthouses. I'm wondering whether the state chief judicial, whoever's the chief judge of the Hartford conference or the state conference has issued that order or is going to issue that order or is being lobbied to issue an order like that.
You want to start and then we'll go.
Do you want?
Yes. Yes.
I had a compound question,
Yes.
sorry.
The good news is that our Chief Justice announced that our courts, our judicial branch, has these rules in place now, newly, that ban arrests on the court property and also ban agents from wearing masks inside the courthouse. It is not codified into law yet. So part of what we're pushing for is for our legislators to do that in a special session and hopefully be able to expand. You know, we're looking at what could policy do to expand on what is the area that could be protected, because the truth is that a lot of our folks who are getting arrested, who honestly, in the majority of cases have not been charged with something, but they're just in the process, but are getting arrested right outside the courthouse. And there are some states that have been able to codify travel to and from the courthouse, but it's all very much in discussion right now. We're not sure exactly how much it can be improved, but for sure we want to do what the judicial branch did into law.
I also wanted to shed some light on your excellent question. Unfortunately, in January 2025, we had the introduction of the Laken-Riley Act, which creates a separate deportable class of aliens merely based on an arrest. They don't even have to wait until a conviction of certain crimes, including shoplifting. Shoplifting is one of the listed crimes for which, if arrested, not even convicted, you could be picked up and subject to mandatory detention if your entry was undocumented. And so, it's mandatory detention. These people are subject to federal mandatory detention if arrested for certain crimes. And that's why it's so dangerous around courthouses, because you get arrested and then you're given the right to show up to defend yourself, and whoop, the federal agents with a mandatory detention mandate from the Lake and Riley Act of January 2025 are there to pick you up. So that's why this is an important, crucial initiative to preserve due process inside courthouses. And it's not just the criminal courthouses or the family courthouses, it's the immigration courthouses, no longer now as much, but it used to be the case that people showed up at their immigration court hearing, which personally touches me because I had a lot of clients begging me to beg the judge for them to appear on video rather than in person. And in certain immigration courts outside of Connecticut, that's just not allowed. The judge does not allow the respondents to appear on video, only in person. And they've been begging and they couldn't sleep, and there was a lot of mental health issues associated with defending their asylum case in court in person. And I had to do a lot of work to convince them it's okay, it's fine, you're still on track, I'm gonna be there with you, I'm not letting them dismiss your case, I'm going to definitely object to any arrest, etc. So it's an excellent question and it's very important these days.
I have another question here.
I was just going to add and welcome Senator Slath and Representative Gibson who joined us. As Constanza said, there are a number of items that we are very much looking closely at for a special session, which right now is scheduled for November 12th or 13th. And this item about codifying what has been put into judicial policy is something that I know many of us are supportive of, because we want to make sure that it stays strong and can't be challenged from a legal perspective in the same way that a policy can be.
I have a question here.
Thank you. So my name is Alana and I work in the field of domestic violence. And for survivors of domestic violence who are undocumented, one of the major barriers to leaving their abusers are actually threats of deportation. So I was wondering what protections are in place for survivors of domestic violence who are undocumented.
I'll take this one. So there's a Violence Against Women Act that protects any battered spouses and children and parents of a U.S. citizen or permanent resident aggressor, in that they could still get a green card based on a self-petition for victim of domestic violence. And so spouses have the impression that they cannot leave their aggressor because that green card is going away and they're going to be deported. Not so. In fact, they get more power the minute they try to avail themselves of the Violence Against Women Act and file this I-360 petition. Excellent nonprofit partners here could do that for survivors. Also, there's U visa, victim of a crime. Even if your partner, your aggressor, is not a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, therefore you cannot avail yourself of Violence Against Women Act, there's U visa if the aggressor is a non-U.S. citizen or non-permanent resident, and the crime is one of those grave crimes, including felonious assault and domestic violence. And you as a victim cooperate with the police against the aggressor. This is very important because that's where the shyness comes in. That's where I've seen it come in. I don't want to cooperate with the police. Some of them do not trust the police. I have to explain to them that the Hartford or Connecticut police is not allowed to cooperate with ICE. As long as they cooperate with the police and the police signs a certification that they have so cooperated, they can obtain a U visa for victims of crime. And so those are the two main ways in which domestic violence victims get protection. Okay.
Dana mentioned earlier, the Lake and Riley Act, which I think one of the other crimes for which someone may be subject to mandatory detention is for a crime of domestic violence. So I worked with legal aid for 20 years and represented survivors of domestic violence in immigration cases. And I know too, another factor is often very much concern about the partner. It's a problem, of course, if someone gets arrested herself too, under the laws. So I think these times really pose special challenges for how we support and how we safety plan. And I think the old answers to questions about, what might happen automatically or what one should do, really we're thinking it all through all over again.
Yeah. And we shouldn't forget to mention the I-751 waiver of joint filing. So if you already got your conditional green card, and that's when your spouse starts abusing you, or that's when you can't take it any longer and you leave the marriage, spouses think that they're gonna lose their green card. Not so. There's an additional step that they could file, an I-751 waiver of the joint filing requirement, and they could still get their green card. And without even having to prove abuse. All they have to prove is that the marriage was true to begin with. And you don't have to prove the abuse. So there's ways. The message should be very clear. Victims of domestic violence will not be deported by taking action to get themselves to safety. There's, in fact, more rights that attach the minute you decide to get to safety and away from your abuser.
I think this really highlights, personally, I think from the people that I know that are in those situations, it's one of the most clear reasons why we need to protect the courthouses and also enforce the Trust Act at the state level and at the municipal level. We have to make sure that police departments are not cooperating with ICE, and that means they are not sharing information about somebody. There's a couple of exceptions in terms of people who have felony charges, but other than that, for someone who has a domestic violence case, they should be protected, and I can't say right now that they are. If we don't protect our courthouses, I don't think it is entirely safe, right? And in the community we have programs to do court accompaniment, and of course there's the wonderful nonprofits that do that work and also do court accompaniment and support for victims, but also those nonprofits are struggling, right, and don't have enough money to operate. So that includes the legal services to apply for these existing pathways for victims. But if people, the nonprofits don't have funding to hire more attorneys, more case managers, we can't even take advantage of the few pathways that exist. And if we don't protect the courthouses, we can tell people that they can, but we can't control what the federal government is doing, but we can control what the State Department and we can control what our municipalities are doing.
Okay, so I'd like to get to a question from one of our online viewers. The question is, I've seen at least one patient who came to the hospital emergency department after midnight due to fear of encountering ICE during the daytime. Have there been conversations with the surrounding hospitals regarding expanded telehealth services so patients can obtain appropriate health care without leaving their homes?
I don't know. I haven't heard.
Anybody?
I haven't heard hospital specific, but telehealth is something that we've continued to make available post-COVID. I don't know if other legislators have heard hospital specific.
To me, what it makes me think of is at the federal level, protected, just the, I'm not familiar with what is happening with telehealth, but your hospitals and schools, right, used to be protected areas, and churches and synagogues, right, used to be sensitive locations, and now they're no longer deemed as such by the federal government. I know that some of our congressional delegation was working on that, but I don't think it has gone anywhere with the climate at the federal level. I don't know that it can go anywhere, But I think those are, this is why, right? Like those spaces need to be protected.
As someone who advises employers on a regular basis what to do when ICE shows up, in the case of hospitals, you cannot prevent ICE agents from accessing the public space that other patients are using to wait for ER services, but you can forbid ICE from accessing private backroom hospital space because the door is clearly marked as you can't go further beyond this point. And so you can only, as an ICE agent, you can only access that private area where the patients are hosted with either hospital consent, which we always advise them not to give, or with a judge order, not just any judge, not an immigration judge, not an ICE agent, but a regular superior court or federal judge. That's what they need to access the patient area. Otherwise, our hospital clients are advised not to allow ICE agents for several reasons. First of all, it's a violation of I don't know how many confidentiality provisions in federal healthcare law. And second of all, they just can't. They have a duty to protect their patients. They can't allow just anybody, including ICE agents, access the private areas. So in real life, it shouldn't happen. This should not happen without an ICE, without a judicial warrant.
Right.
Here's a question.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing, and I'm speaking from experience and some friends. So depending on the healthcare services or the facility or the hospital or the clinic, you have the right to request for a Zoom or a team meeting for that appointment. The only time that they will, from my experience and from what I gather, is that unless it's a physical exam, right, you have to be there physically. Unless it's for some kind of medication that's a narcotic, you have to be there physically. But generally, they will give you an appointment over Zoom, and they will send you that link. Now, you have that right to request that. The only time that they won't do that if you have to physically be there, or then also if you're on workers' comp. Workers' comp, you have to go to see your doctor in person. So I think right now what we can do is reach out to the CEOs of the hospitals in the state of Connecticut and the clinics and request and require that they start offering this service, not waiting for the patient to request it, but to offer it automatically. And then if they can't, give an explanation and maybe do a home visit, because that's been done as well.
My question, I don't know if this is on, you can hear me?
Yeah.
You're presenting some things that are quite technical, you know, the terms and everything else, but right now, there's a huge fear factor for all of these people. If I was undocumented, I'm not even sure I'd want to go to your office to see you. How do I know that there isn't somebody waiting outside? So how do you get the message out on a grassroots level? I mean, when I saw the announcement of this, I said, well, what person who is undocumented is going to come to this meeting? How do they know somebody isn't waiting outside the door?
Yeah.
I think obviously trust is huge. And my very, very best source of clients are current clients and their family members, because I find that once someone feels like they've been treated well and been accompanied through the process, that they're more likely to, to share my name or to recommend me to someone else. Otherwise, I think, again, you've got to figure out how to build trust. It can be a very, very personal approach. My approach is very low key. I don't do a lot of advertising. I don't broadcast myself on social media. I sort of let people come to me, and I always reinforce with people during consultations that our conversation is protected by law. I can only advise people properly if I know all the facts of the case. And one of my favorite sayings to people is, save surprises for birthday. Because surprises are never good in immigration. I'm like, no surprises, please. So we do our best.
I echo her remarks. In my case, I do a lot of tele-attorney, so telehealth, tele-law. I'm big into Zoom, and so are my clients. And we have a link in Spanish, one in Ukrainian, one in French, one in Romanian, one in English. So no matter your language, you get a link to set up your appointment, and you get Zoom instructions in that language. And we chat on Zoom. You don't have to come. As a matter of fact, I prefer it when they do it via Zoom because I spare them a trip. Sometimes it's quite the production to get to downtown Hartford where I am. So that's not an issue. It doesn't have to be an issue, but I also wanted to point out your own role in all of this, in overcoming their fear. You can accompany them to attorney meetings if they consent, right? You could bring them there, and if anybody's waiting there to do some harm, you know what to do. You're there with them. Don't worry, there will be no one there waiting for them other than us, the attorneys. We have security at the desk. Nobody who's not supposed to enter the building is gonna enter our building. And I'm gonna know if there's any ICE agents around the law firm, and they wouldn't dare, would they?
I would.
So that should not be a concern. There's tele-attorneys, and there's no one daring to come at a law firm just like that. And if so, our security will take care of them.
Excuse me. So I can speak to the work that we've been doing on like our broader network that we're calling the Connecticut Immigrant Support Network, and it's essentially that it's building out a network of community organizations like Hartford Deportation Defense, like Connecticut Students for a Dream, like Make the Road, all these community organizations that already work with affected community members. There's already that level of trust that's established. Right, but to your point, we have seen like less people show up to things because of fear, right? We've kind of pivoted into not advertising our events or workshops or clinics on social media for that same reason, and so we've used more grassroots methods of reaching out to folks through like encrypted messaging apps and things like that. Also, making things more accessible through Zoom, right, where people don't have to show up in person and can do it from their comfort of their homes. And then, just having a website that has a lot of centralized information, right? So if people want to learn something, they can go. So, for example, we have one that's called ctimmigrants.org. Which is a great resource that has like a lot of different links to things on data privacy. It has links to forms, if someone is detained, and know your rights, and family preparedness plans, and red folder documents, and a bunch of different resources that people might need, info that they want to learn.
So yes, trust is built in our neighborhoods, in our schools, in every space in our libraries, like here today. We cannot expect trust to just be there. I think people are afraid, and it's for a reason. West Hartford Center is not protected from ICE, right? Like we are vulnerable everywhere right now, and that's not meant to be a statement that to scare people. It's just kind of level setting on what we're actually dealing with is not okay. It's not normal. At Newington, the car wash, again, because I know the people who are there, people were racially profiled. Nobody asked for nobody's papers. Nobody asked for anybody's name or had anybody's picture that they were looking for somebody. They racially profiled people. They were in plain clothes, and they took them. And then they checked later if they were immigrants or immigration status or what. So that is, I think that's, unfortunately, I would love to not be in that place, but that is where we are. So we have to really confront that as communities, you know, what is our role here? If, you know, and I think, of course, we have to change who's in power at the federal government, but for now, what are we able to do to protect ourselves and protect each other? And what is the role, again, of our state government, our municipal government in this crisis that we're in? Because, you know, it's not just this meeting, right? Like, I feel like people, we have live streaming and we can do online law appointments, right? But like, what about schools? Like, are we just not sending our kids to school? Are we just not going to the ER? So none of these places are protected, right? So how can we actually protect our spaces and our communities?
So let me follow up with that then with a question. I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago where Mayor Cantor was in attendance with the 2 assistant chiefs from the police department, from our West Hartford Police Department. And what we learned on that evening from both the mayor and from the assistant chiefs is were a few, I thought, pretty encouraging messages. Number one is that the police department here in town is completely, fully trained on every aspect of the Trust Act. They know what the Trust Act means. They know what their role as the police is and what it isn't. They've all received excellent training on that, and they also have all received training on de-escalation techniques, so that if they, as police officers, come upon some kind of a disturbance somewhere that involves, whether it involves ICE agents or not, all of our officers in this town have been trained on de-escalation. That was an encouraging thing to hear. And in response to a question that evening about the schools, which was just mentioned, we also learned that the police department have been in contact with and in consultation with the school board here in town, and there is, we didn't get all the details of that, didn't expect to, but broadly speaking, what we learned is that the schools and the police department have an understanding between each other as to what the risks are and how, you know, how a response might unfold. And just as a last observation from that meeting, one of the assistant chiefs made a point of saying, listen, if you're out and about in the town and you see something that you think looks out of order, you see some person in plain clothes with a mask on and there's something funny going on, he said, you all carry one of these, 911, call us, that is to say the police, the West Hartford Police, and they will respond, and they can get there quickly. And again, that was encouraging. I was glad to hear that. Now, I guess a follow-up question for our friends on the panel is there something else you can think of for our town? The mayor is here with us. Is there something that you would suggest further that we do? Do you have some kind of you know, suggestion or idea that we as a town ought to be pursuing? Thank you.
Yes, I was just invited to give a presentation at the Conference of Municipalities, and with the same question, what can municipalities do to assist in this crisis? And because I come from the angle of business immigration and employment-based immigration, and that's what I started telling you, that employers can do way more to help. Now, for them to sponsor a green card, it's a cost starting between $5,000 to $8,000 per person, okay? So some of them will say, that's too much. Some of them will just pay it. I've had the best and the worst of employers give me feedback on this. So you'll find employers on all ranges. What municipalities like West Hartford can do is encourage their employer base to consider sponsoring folks who they already employ. Let's start with the people they already employ, because those are their wanted employees. And those employees could be taken away and snatched and detained and deported unless they get a green card sponsorship. So I would encourage employers in West Hartford to consider sponsoring their employees. It's especially an issue with folks like Ukrainians, Afghans, Cubans, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans, and who am I leaving out?
Haitians.
Haitians, who have lost or are about to lose their humanitarian parole statuses. Employers have been complacent getting from the Biden administration a free work permit for these people. And then all of a sudden it gets taken away, and employers feel like, well, I didn't have to pay anything for it, why should I pay more to sponsor these people for a green card? And I think that's the wrong attitude. We need to encourage businesses to consider, they know, deep down they know that that's the right thing to do. If you've had a Ukrainian employee on a U4U work permit and this is getting frozen or about to expire, consider applying for their permanent residence to secure their permanent status to live and work in this country and not be deported to a dangerous country where there's war, etc., with all the others that I mentioned. It applies equally to everyone else. And so that's the one thing that I would do as a municipality. I think it's very powerful because it's a source of legalization. Anybody else?
I think I'll keep it short, but just having clear protocols, like it seems like, but maybe making those public or, just known, and also having a way for people to let agencies and departments know if those protocols have not been followed. I think that's something, for example, in Hartford we're working on, is making sure that the protocols are followed and we know what's the process when they are not followed.
Another question?
Hi, I have a data question. We're talking in a lot of generalizations, but I was wondering if we have any accurate data on how many citizens we have here in West Hartford who are undocumented, how many students we have in West Hartford who are undocumented, so that we have an estimate of how many people need our help in this process.
Do you know?
So, no, so there's a reason we don't know, because we don't ask.
We don't track,
So,
we don't track that.
We know we have thousands of undocumented people that live in town, but we don't know exact numbers. We are estimating between 6,000 and 8,000, and students, 1,000 to 2,000, something like that.
I'll just add to my little report from when I was at the meeting a couple weeks ago, that another little piece of data that was shared with us at that meeting is that to date, as of 2 weeks ago, and I trust it's the same this evening, to date, in West Hartford, there have been no ICE raids, no arrests, no detainees from the town of West Hartford, and that's nice to know, but of course, there are no guarantees. It's just comforting to know, for me to have learned anyway, and to have shared with you tonight, that that our police department are, in my estimation, about as prepared as they can be. I mean, they can't literally control the behavior of ICE agents or others who would undertake, controversial kinds of behavior, but they are well trained in how to deal with it when, if and when it should happen.
Hi, I think we are on the same page that we want to help those people who need our help, and as a local, small business owner, I definitely like the idea of the sponsorship, but are there any other things or like helping things from the state or from the senator who can they help us, small business owners, to help our employees? What can we do? Of course, getting the lawyers, posting the signs, no, it is a private area, we've done that. But still, our employers are scared. They didn't want to go to work in January when Trump was inaugurated, and that happened for a long time. So what can we do? Like, are there any steps that the state is taking to protect us so we can help our employers?
Can I tee it up for them by saying this? In order for you guys to sponsor green cards for your employees, if you don't have the 5,000 to 8,000 per person, and I get how if you have like 10 Ukrainians or Cubans, 10 times 5 is 50,000. Perhaps there could be course development funds going around. I'm just teeing it up for you. So there you go.
I'll just say, I'm learning a lot tonight too, and that's a great idea. I'm wondering, as we're talking, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we passed a law, we passed a law in Connecticut that schools have to have a protocol, right? Like towns have to have a
Yes.
protocol about what happens at
Yes.
schools if ice arrives.
Yes, they do.
I don't know what the barrier was, and is there a barrier to us going further and doing what we're talking about doing at the courts to schools and hospitals? Like, why haven't we gone in that direction? So after tonight, I'm interested in having that, so I'm learning too, and then hearing this about, why maybe we could offer a fund to support small, businesses who wanna do this now.
All right, so talking about schools, during the day, I'm a principal at Jamoki Academy in Hartford, but I think the ruling is the same throughout the state. We've been told that if ICE agent shows up at the school, we don't have to let them in. We call the Board of Education, notify them, and then we call the police. So as far as ICE agents coming to the schools, most schools have a buzzer system or some type of system to get into the school. They're not gonna just walk in, we're not gonna just let them in. They have to wait, and we let our Board of Education and our local police departments take care of that.
Hi, I was just wondering if places of worship could also be protected.
Yep.
That, and I wondered about, I think working with employers or trying to reach employers is a wonderful, wonderful idea. And I just was wondering if there are other ways to advance that, perhaps like meeting with members of the Chamber of Commerce, or I don't know if there are other employer-related groups that could be met with.
Yes, there's the Connecticut Business and Industry Association, is the Metro Hartford Alliance, and I'm sure you guys have a West Hartford Chamber of Commerce here. Those are wonderful places to raise awareness about this. But may I just say something for humanity's sake? They misinterpret it. Some employers misinterpret it when you come up to them and you say, why don't you sponsor this, I don't know, Ukrainian employee as another cost of doing business. No, it's different. You gotta package it as, yes, it's a cost of doing business, but it's the right cost of doing business, because you're saving a life here. Like, especially when you consider the humanitarian parolees I just enumerated. Imagine sending Ukrainians back to Ukraine, Haitians back to a war zone, etc. And so if you are benefiting from their labor, and you've done so freely because Biden has not charged employers anything for those work permits, then why not do the right thing and consider sponsoring a green card? Let me explain really in short what sponsoring a green card for employment means. It means that you have to go through a 3-step process to prove to the Department of Labor that there are no minimally qualified U.S. workers ready, willing, and available to take that job. And you do so by posting ads and see who shows up. I even advise my employers who complain about lack of labor in Connecticut in many fields. I say, you know what, place enough jobs out there so that even if qualified U.S. workers show up, you hire the U.S. workers and you hire the foreigners too. It's a win-win for everybody involved. And they still don't get enough workers to show up. And so the point is, that's the point. It's a process through which you explain to the federal government that there just aren't enough U.S. workers in construction or landscaping or whatever business you happen to be in, and that's how that person ends up with their green card, because there's scarcity of labor. And we have a lot of scarcity of labor in various fields in Connecticut. So there's room for a lot of green card sponsorships. Employers just need to understand that it's not just a gesture of cost of labor or cost of business. It's also a humanitarian gesture that we desperately need at this point, and it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
I can speak to your point about the churches and the places of worship. So part of the work that we're doing through the statewide network is building out our interfaith ministry. So it's different congregations from all across the state, and it's lay people, it's clergy that are trying to get together and do something. So as Constanza said, churches or new places of worship are no longer considered sensitive areas by ICE or by DHS, right? And so they do technically have, you know, the right to enter these spaces. Still looks bad, so they haven't really gotten there, at least yet, but it is possible. But before, you know, they were not deemed sensitive areas. They were places of refuge. People sought sanctuary, right? If ICE was looking for them at churches. But now we are using them as resources for things like mutual aid and you know, activating those types of volunteers that want to do things like helping folks put together documentation or court accompaniment, you know, and just community support if someone, you know, or a loved one or a community member gets detained. And yeah, so we're working with that.
So I'm actually, these aren't questions, but I actually have a sort of follow-up to the religious one. I believe that somewhere in the country there is now a First Amendment case pending where churches or faith institutions are claiming that they have a religious liberty right.
That's right.
For sanctuary and assisting. And given our Supreme Court's expansive view of religious liberty, this might be something that Connecticut faith communities may want to think about. I was also just going to say another way perhaps of framing the applying for a green card for a current employee is if you don't, you're going to have to pay to train somebody else. And so you've already kind of got a sunk cost of having trained someone. And paying for the green card can prevent you from having to train a new employee, advertise, hire, and train a new employee. It might just be another way of moving them along.
That's a good idea.
Not to mention, you know, putting in that effort into someone, they're probably going to stick around, right? So you're investing in that employee, and then they will in turn be a really great employee for you for a long time. Very loyal to you.
State and local governments are employers. I know you have budget constraints, but why can't state and local governments, as in their capacity as an employer, hire some of the people that you're suggesting private employers do?
Wow, that's, I think it's been tried I've heard it tried in Colorado during the Biden administration. I think there was some of that going on. Listen, I'm not here to force things that are not supposed to be together. So I'm here to recognize that employers who are already employing these employees need to do the right thing by them. There's no excuse, really. And I spent considerable time explaining this to employers, and most of them will say, oh, absolutely, yes. Some of them are even overjoyed that someone has pointed out this path towards legalization and permanent residency, because they're more than happy to do it. But then there are other employers who look at this as a cost, and this is where I think a little bit of moral authority from the rest of us, whether it's from politicians or the public or the Chamber of Commerce, would come in handy, kind of like moral weight. Look, here's what I'm doing for my employees, why don't you do the same for your employees? And maybe we should sport some examples of what's happening, of good employers.
Yeah, some models.
Yeah. We should model. So those are just natural. Like wherever they happen to be employed right now, those are the right employers to sponsor their green cards.
I just got to say how helpful this is tonight. I want to go back to schools for a second, because I'm wondering about protecting people on school grounds as well as in the schools, because a lot of families pick up and drop-offs, kids, you know, high school kids driving to and from school. I'm wondering about that, and then also about parochial and independent schools in our town, and whether they are guided around the protocols of what they should be doing to inform families and protect students.
Anybody wants to take this?
Okay, I can say something. I don't know all the answers, but what I can say was what we commented earlier, that the state has given guidance to all schools to have a plan. And again, in working with the municipalities, as you heard here in West Hartford, it sounds like there's communication happening between the schools and the West Hartford Police, not just about what might be proceeding around protocol in schools, but around schools. And what I don't know the answer to, and maybe the mayor wants to comment on this, is if there's been any conversation with the parochial schools in town. I'm not familiar with that, or if anyone else knows.
I know that the parochial schools got the guidance from the state. I know the police have followed up to see if there are any questions. But I think it's a good idea for us to check in and make sure that they are comfortable. You know, and they generally don't have walkers. Yet our public schools have a lot of kids walking to and from school. So there's a little more vulnerability in that exercise of kids walking to and from school. I think that families that are at risk may have changed some behaviors. But we have messaged multiple times, and we will continue to. But I'm making sure that our parochial and private schools are also aware. So, thank you.
I think that that's a great point that you bring up, and something that we're unfortunately probably going to see more of. Because grounds maybe aren't safe if it's outside. Like that is a very gray area. In New Haven, maybe like a couple months ago, we had there was a mother that was going to go drop her children off to school and was pulled over with the kids in the car and was dragged out, and it was like a super traumatic experience for everybody. We are seeing kids that are scared to go to school. We are seeing parents scared to send their kids to school and then to do that drop off and pick up, because based off of precedent, we know that it is a possibility that ICE will be there, and that's something that's unfortunately only going to ramp up. So it's not a great answer for you, but it is the reality that we will continue to see.
I think it seems like a great thing to look into as a commission, right? Like, to make a recommendation of the municipality to, if there's a will at the local level, something that can be really great for the rest of us is to have something modeled by a place, if a resolution can be done, like something can be done at the local level, could be replicated in other towns, and then when we see that many towns have adopted it, we can bring it to the state and say, look, all these towns have done this and it seems to be working and it's legal. I think it's definitely something worth looking into. I don't know the details of the viability of it, but it is something. Even before, during the Biden administration in Hartford, we had someone picked up who had just dropped off her kids. So again, it's like the school grounds area, like not the school, but like walking home, but she was very close to the school. So it's just a very vulnerable moment in someone's life, right? Like it's, you're walking to and from.
Which is why I would just say, to comment on the community effort, I think people might have seen in some other communities, they've had folks standing along routes, right, where people are walking to school when there's been ICE activity. I know that was something that New Haven even stood up. So I just bring that up as an example of community activity, right, that can come about when there is an increased presence or an increased vulnerability there. Yeah, do you want to comment on that?
I do want to follow. Yeah. So when a couple of times we have received calls where people thought there was ICE activity, and there was a lot of police were very involved in checking out and seeing if this was real. We had one situation recently, it was last week I think. There were two unmarked cars, people with masks that had uniforms on, some kind of uniform. They didn't say ICE. As Dave has heard, our police want to know if there's somebody coming into town, they want to know who they are. And they're going to call. They're going to call every agency to find out, what are you doing in our town and why? And who are you going after? And that is clear from the leadership on down. That is very, and I'll just notice Matt Hart, our past town manager who hired our police chief, thank you very much for doing that. And who also is executive director of CROG, which is also a great resource for municipalities. And I'm sure you're going to be bringing it back. I also want to recognize our town council member, Deb Pullen, who chairs our Human Rights Commission, our Human and Leisure Services Committee. Anyway. But we had 2 cars that stopped at Home Depot, and so, you know, there's been Home Depot issues before. And so the police knew exactly. They had called, they checked the license plate, they called different agencies. They were extradition, actually officers that were extraditing somebody, but their car broke down and they needed a part. So it had nothing to do with West Hartford, but it happened, like they had the whole story.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I'm just saying that.
That's
And
amazing.
then within minutes, I needed lots and lots more parts.
So as far as schools are concerned, that's a really good question. I'm gonna bring that back. If our children are inside of our schools, we got that set, but if they're like on the playground, I think that has to be a school leader's quick decision. What I would do is I would go into a lockdown situation, get all the scholars back into the building, and then proceed from there. Nonetheless, that would be a very bad look. I would hope they would not do something like that, kids outside for recess. But that's what I would do. I would get them back inside the building, lock down the building, and then proceed to call my central office in the police department.
Wow. I am not aware of hearing any reports in the state of any of the health clinics that see largely, I mean Malta House of Care, you know, here, Waterbury. That's almost 100% undocumented people visiting there. Is anybody aware of any activity taking place outside of those institutions? You know, we're talking about schools where in West Hartford it's a very small number of undocumented, but now we have locations that, from my experience, are almost 100% undocumented clients, and I have not heard or read or wondered if anybody else had about those institutions.
There are,
I think there are people thinking about how to safeguard people's data in those settings too, because especially a lot of the community health centers that we have are federally qualified health clinics that are really essential, not just for the undocumented community, but for everybody. And there's some concern about losing federal funding, and I don't know if Jillian, you know more about that piece of it, but just because immigrant communities are being used as a scapegoat for basically wanting to just cut funding from everywhere, whenever they can link it, I think they're doing that, and that's one of the places where it's becoming just a subject of concern. But I haven't heard of any enforcement of clinics.
Deb might have a comment on that. Deb, please. Introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody.
It's on.
Hi, everybody.
No. Yeah.
So I'm Deb Poland, I serve on the town council here, but in my day job, I work for the Community Health Center Association of Connecticut. So we work with all of the federally qualified health centers around the state, and this is a daily topic of conversation for the health centers. They serve some undetermined number of undocumented people. Are we still on?
Yes.
Why is it undetermined? Because the health centers don't ask immigration status the same way that our schools don't ask immigration status. We have not heard of any ICE activity in our health centers yet. I know that in the Fairhaven neighborhood in New Haven, there has been escalated ICE activity. There's a lot of undocumented folks there, and we do have a health center in that neighborhood that's extremely concerned about this issue, as they ought to be. But so far in Connecticut, we have not heard of any ICE activity at the health centers. I'm not sure about the Malta House of Care or some of the other places.
I have a question. Very disturbed, I don't like the name, but very disturbed by Operation Freaky Friday. for a variety of reasons, the tactics they're using are very abusive, having worked in gender-based violence, so to use money for children and then to threaten their family is very disturbing. Is anything being done legally? Because it does seem like, how can they target children, especially, I mean, this administration is this administration, I'll put a pin in that, but if there is a documented parent, it would seem to me one could make the case that you can't reach out to a child without the parent's permission. I don't, yeah.
No, they were reaching out to guardians, essentially sending the communications to the guardians. But there's also been a pattern over the years, as soon as a child turns 18, they've also then moved to take the child into custody.
I thought though that this was, because the 14.
Freaky Friday, 14 to 18. Yeah, but I thought it was directed at the guardians.
That's like the next step, I think. But it's like whatever, so when, I mean, and you guys will speak better to this, but when children get to, you know, like a border or something, they then go to ORR, right, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, and there's like unaccompanied minors, right? And so they have like a particular address that's put in there, so that might not even be like their guardian, it could be just whoever was like a family member, like their contact, wherever they're going after that, and then they're, you know, subject to move and stuff, but yeah, it's being sent to that address, that original like landing place. But yeah, it's being targeted for those like 14, 18-year-olds. Yeah.
I'm not surprised this is being done. I don't know if you guys remember in the spring, there were quite the notices being issued to U.S. citizens.
Yes.
Get out of the country. So U.S. citizens born and raised here, including a fellow immigration attorney, got a bunch of notices. Get out of the country, your parole is up. So I'm not surprised if either by design or by sheer incompetence, the wrong people get these notices. What is being done about it is probably the same backlash that we're seeing with everything else, and if those notices are as much as sought to be enforced, there would be most likely federal litigation by now. Federal litigation is the only thing that stays with us these days, and it's the only effective legal mechanism to address enforcement actions from what we've seen, unless it's major backlash nationally, like you've seen it with the H-1B. But even with the H-1B, there was major federal litigation going on, filed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to reverse the trend. So I think that, unfortunately, this is the new reality we're in. If you want to reverse a decision, an enforcement action or decision, you have to sue in some federal court. I wanted to take this opportunity to also raise awareness about the positive impact of class action litigation in the Calderon settlement. I don't think that many people know about this, but New England states are blessed because there was a class action settlement obtained by ACLU of Massachusetts that covers all New England residents who are married to U.S. citizens, but they're here in undocumented status, and they even have a deportation, a final deportation order against them. They have a window per class action settlement until January 2027 to reopen that deportation order, clear it up, and legalize based on marriage to that U.S. citizen. And people don't know this, and it only happens in New England states. So people in California are losing spouses as we speak. Their spouses, if they have a final deportation order, they're gone. They're getting kicked out of the country. But if you live in New England, you're not only is your foreign spouse protected from detention, but also from deportation. And under the settlement, we are allowed to ask ICE to cooperate with us, attorneys, in reopening the deportation order and obtaining full legalization. And that's why I'm saying there's some good news hidden in the bad news. There's still avenues, there's still doors open. Please, we're trying to get the word out that please try to talk to an attorney to see what other doors are still open to you. Much more so in New England than anywhere else. So Connecticut is part of New England, And so a lot of spouses could be legalizing as we speak, and they're just living their life in fear, thinking they can't.
Say the name of the class action.
Calderon
Calderon.
Settlement, ACLU, Massachusetts obtained it for us. And it's valid, so we have another year or so to legalize as many spouses of US citizens with final deportation orders as possible. Get the word out there, have them meet with immigration attorneys. After January 2027, it's anyone's guess what happens to those spouses.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine, long life friend of mine, who's out in Washington, D.C. as an immigration attorney. And, aside from our other conversation, I did get involved with questioning and asking him, being that he's a Republican, how is he handling this, with our present, president and his status as an immigration attorney, and how he felt about it. So obviously he feels pretty bad because his wife is an immigrant, all right? And being that he's been working in this field for years that I've known him, he basically, he feels and this administration definitely has pushed the envelope and is an exaggeration of what the laws are presently being created. I asked him about how does he handle his clients, and the first thing he started telling me, and it's a sad reality, is that he has clients that reaches out to him daily, every minute of the hour, and he's overwhelmed. But he has a lot of folks that reach out to him that, unfortunately, if you didn't come here on a visa, or you came here on a visa and expired, or somehow you got here legally or sponsored, then you do have a chance. To the point is to get someone to sponsor you. But if you are here illegally, completely illegal, and you can't find a sponsor, he's told me he turned away hundreds of possible clients because he doesn't want to take their money. He basically said that two things. He told them, I'm not taking your money. The best thing you can do is you call up the court system, let them know who you are, let them know that you're going to self-deport, and they will give you funding to help you go to your destination, rather than them grabbing you and sending you to a country that you don't know anyone or even the culture there. That's one. Two, what really bothered him is that there's plenty of attorneys and notarizers, because in a Spanish country, like in Puerto Rico, notarizer is actually an attorney. But here, notarizer is a notarizer. That's it. Whether you're an attorney or not, you can still be a notarizer here in this country. So there's attorneys and notarizers who are taking advantage of these folks and taking their money, pretending and promising them a good result. And that is a reality. And I've heard that's going on here in Connecticut as well. I heard this earlier this year and last year. So I think it's important that we reach out to our immigrant neighbors, families, friends, and help them and educate everyone else for that matter, to make sure that when you reach out for help, you make sure that that person is legit, licensed, insured, and is telling you the truth about your status and the possibility whether you can become a U.S. citizen, get your green card, or renew your visa, or are they gonna, give you some nonsense, non-realistic, I don't know, accomplishment that basically means nothing, and they're gonna steal your money. So I think that's important to make sure that, you know, these folks are aware. We have to make sure that we're aware of who's in our you know, surrounding or circle and out of that circle as well, and making sure we keep, you know, an eye on what's going on, so that we can make sure these immigrants, our you know, families and friends can survive what's going on in today's you know, situation. That's all. I just want to share that.
Thank you. We did start a little bit late, so if people are okay staying a few more minutes. We also do have one more question I'd like to raise that came in, but Andrea, want to speak to that first?
Yeah, just really quick, just talking about attorneys and knowing, notarios, but like also acknowledging the fact that there aren't that many immigration attorneys in the state of Connecticut, right? And so it's also an issue of capacity. So us with the Connecticut Immigrant Support Network are also working to train non-immigration attorneys, like specifically like criminal defense attorneys who already have a lot of experience with bond. And we're partnering with Glenn Formica in New Haven has been doing like a lot of this work with us, and so we have around like 13 attorneys so far that we're, you know, in the process of like training and you know, sitting in on bond hearings and stuff to basically prepare them to take on bond cases. So just so you know, there's another thing that we're working on.
Thank you all. Okay, there's actually two questions that came in, but I'll just do one and then
About the answer later from someone else for the other one. But there's been a lot of talk about what business owners, town council members, people in power, legislators, people connected to these different organizations, attorneys can do. But what about regular community members? People who maybe don't have those connections yet, people who are looking around and saying, I want to help, but I don't know what to do, or people who are like, it's too much, people who are like, I'm not comfortable going on the front lines against ICE. What would you recommend for people who want to help but aren't sure where to start?
I'm sure the ladies to my right have all the right answers, so you will tell them much more. But from my perspective as an attorney, I'm relying on you guys to be able to advise vulnerable populations how to find a competent, licensed immigration attorney, because you have access to the internet and you have research skills they don't have and language skills they might not have. So please research online. There are reputable directories. Two of them come to mind: avvo.com and AILA.org. So these are two legal directories that if you search up the reputation of any attorney, you find out if they're licensed, if they're credentialed, client reviews, have they been disciplined? This is very important. Have they been disciplined by the local bar for stealing money, etc.? So you have those skills. The vulnerable populations don't. So you could be that person who brings people to reputable attorneys. I also wanted to offer a little bit of the unlicensed practice of law scare, because I spent close to 75% of my time in the removal defense practice cleaning up after the unauthorized practitioners of law. Because before me, they went to a notario who's not a lawyer in America, just a notary, or someone who pretends to have some authority, but they don't. And that person lied on their asylum application, and now I have to clean it up with the judge and explain away inconsistencies that have been declared on an asylum application. And it's very, very hard. Once my client loses credibility, they lose the case. If they lose credibility with the judge, they lose the case. So in vain, they paid nothing or very little to go to a notario if that application is rotten and will lead to their deportation. Unauthorized practice of law is a Class D felony in Connecticut. And all sorts of people, well-intentioned or ill-intentioned, are engaging in it. The filling out of forms is not supposed to be easy, especially these days. Every single thing you fill out on an immigration form carries a legal consequence and comes back to bite you. either by creating an inconsistency in the record or admitting to stuff or to categories that you're not eligible for. So I have people in deportation proceedings now because their UPL person, the unauthorized practitioner, chose the wrong category on the form. Simple as that. And so I just want to put a word against that, and it's easy for you guys to detect who is licensed and who is not, but it's not easy for the other people, for the Spanish speakers. And they go to the next available person in their community who happens to not be licensed. That's my railing against it.
Senator, to that, and then we'll get back to the community question.
Thank you and good evening, everybody, and sorry for my tardiness earlier. I just wanted to respond to the question about what can people do, and everyone can vote. And early voting started just yesterday, and we hear a lot that the local elections, which unfortunately turnout is a lot lower, as we all know, for local elections, that has nothing to do with what's going on with the federal government or what's going on at the state level. And just listening to this conversation, it's so obvious, I think, to all of us that that's simply not true. If you look at the empathy and the class that Mayor Cantor and the rest of her colleagues have who are running this town, they do it and they always observe the law, but they do it recognizing that everybody belongs in this town. And so it matters so much to vote. And that's something that everybody can do. So I hope that people come out and do that. And you know, if you are feeling blessed to live in this community, it's not like this by accident. So I would just encourage people to come out and vote.
Any other?
They're just going to come and then we'll wrap up, right?
We can use your money. Yeah, if you're in a position of privilege and, you know, with status or like financial or otherwise, like we're doing this work on the ground, right? But there's only so much we can do without like the funds. So like legal fees, mutual aid, you know, a lot of like these trainings and just getting resources out to the community. So that's probably the biggest one. Yeah, showing up, you know, signing up to maybe be part of like a rapid response. So, you know, some of you might have more time during your day, and that's when ICE is most active. So if we get, you know, like a call out, we see, you know, in the Hartford area, if someone can like go over there just to really like witness and record and get information out to people, sign up to help folks fill out, you know, red folders or whatever else we have coming down the pipeline. Yeah, things like that.
Yeah, and I heard in the question that it's people who don't feel like they can be on the front lines, which is understandable, you know, that's not everybody, but yeah, like we do need resources to do this work. So something that has been really beautiful to see is that people not only donating to us, but also doing fundraisers, and I think for me, that's really the solution right there. It's coming together and doing something together in response to what's happening. Whatever is at your capacity. If you want to get together and do a fundraiser for an organization that is doing the frontline work, or if you want to get together and write letters or postcards to either federal folks or state level legislators to make sure that they know what you want them to be doing because you voted and because you know that mattered to you, that you voted for them, and now you want them to fight for us, right? Like everybody is in their position to fight and from where we are, right? But there's so much. I think the only way we get out of this is with each other, meeting our neighbors truly, block to block. Because we don't know what else could come, you know, that so much of this is unprecedented, and you know, I tend to be an optimist in that, like, you know, even from something as terrible as what we're living today, maybe something good can come out of it, and maybe at the other end of this we know each other better and we know how to work together better and protect each other better. So I would say that's like baseline. So whatever you can do to connect with other people, and at the local level is the best thing, because then you can get together and work on, getting your local people to be the elected officials that you want, and you can get your school to do the things that you need, and you can get your park to be better, and also impact immigrant protections.
There's one opportunity that's available every Saturday from 10 to 11:30. Marianne Langton, I guess she left the meeting, she was over here from the wheelchair. She organizes it, and it's the corner of Farmington and Main, a rally, 10 to 11:30. It's a great chance to get to meet new people, to talk about common interests, and to start actions. I know a lot of postcards have come out for one thing, but everybody who's there is pretty passionate about what's going on.
We have a beautiful fundraiser coming up that Andrea just reminded me of. I don't know if people are familiar with Story and Soil, the coffee shop on Capitol Avenue, but one of their baristas is Mexican and has this wonderful recipe from her grandmother that incorporated into this fancy coffee drink, and then a lot of the proceeds from that drink are going to our fund. And then they're gonna do this really fun dance party, and the drink is gonna be featured. So again, this doesn't have to be boring. We can fight while we're this crisis that we're in, and also love each other and have fun and dance and have delicious coffee drinks. But definitely support each other.
When is that?
That's an excellent question. You can follow us on social media too. I think, again, Hartford Deportation Defense at gmail.com. We can get you on our mailing list, but on social media, we're HFD Immigrants. And you are CT4, number 4, A Dream. So yeah, Cumbia de los Muertos, there's going to be a DJ with cumbia music Saturday, November 1st at 5 p.m.
Awesome, thank you so much. And if anyone missed any of that, West Hartford Human Rights Commission is happy to be a filter, and a lot of us are connected to different organizations, and we can help talk to you and see
how you might want to contribute in the community, or ideas you have, we might be able to put them together. So feel free to reach out to us as well if you forgot an email address or someone's name, and we'll be happy to point you in the right direction. So thanks so much. I know the library closes at 8. Some people might be willing to answer some questions before then, but thank you all so much. This was really great. Really appreciate you all coming out. Really appreciate all of our panelists and legislators. Senator Slapp, thank you all, and Mayor, thank you.
Who is a part of our team, who was an outreach aide, putting this event together. And I know we have as representatives our information in the back, but please reach out to anyone. We appreciate your time and everyone's incredible expertise on this important issue. So thank you, everyone. Oh, yeah, sorry. I should have told you.